Retired US Army General Wesley Clark is a CNN military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He joins us now. Good to have you with us, sir. So, in the wake of this deadly attack on US troops in Jordan, President Joe Biden is vowing to retaliate, and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says that response will come at a place and time of America's choosing, calling it the most dangerous moment in more than 50 years. All this complicated by the need to prevent this Middle East conflict from further escalating. How is that delicate balancing act achieved with those two conflicting goals? And what is the appropriate retaliatory action to meet this moment?
It's a really difficult problem that President Biden has. You want to strike hard enough that Iran won't do it again. But at the same time, you want to try to not give Iran an opportunity to further escalate and draw in the United States more deeply. So it's a tough problem. And I'm sure the White House is looking at three options, notionally. One is a really heavy option, go after Iran, pick the set of targets. Another is a lighter option, hit 4 or 5 different militia points and hit them again and again over a period of 2 or 3 days. And there's a middle ground that says maybe you hit a couple of Iranian assets in the Gulf, or maybe Iranian command and control in Iraq somewhere, but you don't strike into Iran proper. Those would be like 3 different packages. They're going to be debated, talked about, looked at for feasibility, impact, consequences, and so forth.
Yeah, President Biden, he met with his national security team Monday to weigh these possible retaliatory options. How did they work through those options, and how dangerous do you think this moment is that we're confronting right now?
Well, they'll have to work through the options by first asking, are they militarily feasible, and what's the risk militarily for executing them? Can you do it successfully, and are you going to take losses in doing it? So that would be the first criteria. And then the second would be, what's the impact going to be on Iran? And then the third criteria would be, what's the impact in the region going to be? And so they have to weigh all that. You've got diplomatic considerations, you've got military considerations, and so there's a lot in this. But I think that this is a moment where we're going to see a much stronger U.S. response than the previous tit for tat. Now, it may take a day or two more because whatever it is, we're going to put together. And I would guess that it would be more than one set of strikes.
And some Republicans are calling for the US to target Tehran and hit it hard with devastating military retaliation. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that the Republicans do want to see a strike into Iran, a powerful strike at the Republican or Revolutionary Guards command centers, at the Shahed drone factories, at radars that would then send the signal to Iran that you're naked now, we can blow out your radars, you'll never see us coming again, etc. Those kinds of strikes should be in the packages that the president's considering. If I were in as part of that chain of command, I'd be recommending a relatively robust set of strikes. What you want to do is cap this escalation now and say to Iran, you can't afford to go forward, so call off the dogs.
And what we're learning about this deadly attack is that an enemy drone apparently entered the base undetected along with a returning US drone. How does that happen? And how do you prevent that from occurring again?
Well, I'm sure our intelligence assets are really busy trying to determine how this did happen. Conceivably, it could have just happened coincidentally, but it's more likely, in my view, that actually it was deliberate. They know the drone flight patterns over Syria. They have radar. They have other means of knowing what those flight patterns are. And someone figured out, hey, let's just tag along behind that drone and we'll get in. And they tried it and it worked. So, obviously the United States is going to change its procedures henceforth. But it's likely that this wasn't accidental.
And at the heart of all of this is Israel's war with Hamas, making current efforts to negotiate a temporary ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages even more critical. How can those efforts be accelerated to help perhaps de-escalate this situation in the Middle East?
Well, really, Iran has used this and probably set up, in part, this attack by Hamas on Israel. It's all part of a larger Iranian campaign plan to drive the United States out of the region so that all of the Iranian assets can be focused exclusively on Israel. And in the process, disrupting the other regional diplomatic initiatives that the United States and Saudi Arabia are pursuing. So we have to recognize there's a plan behind all this. Now, if we could get a reasonable ceasefire temporarily in Gaza, get the hostages released, that would be really good. But for Israel, this situation in Hamas is, you just can't live with it. You've got to get Hamas out of Gaza, because that is, it's a threat to the existence of Israel. And the same thing is true with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in South Lebanon. So it'd be great to get the hostages released, take a lot of pressure off if you got a 6-week ceasefire as being talked about. But this is going to continue because Israel now sees the writing on the wall. The threat from Iran is closing in, and it's going to have to be dealt with.
General Wesley Clark, we appreciate your military analysis. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.